Holiday family dinners are supposed to bring relatives together. But for the Morrison family in Denver, Colorado, Thanksgiving 2024 brought a revelation that redefined the very meaning of family. When 54-year-old Carol Morrison's little sister Jenny shared her 23andMe results over turkey and cranberry sauce, the DNA percentages on that phone screen would shatter a 32-year-old family secret and force everyone at the table to question everything they thought they knew about their family history. What began as a celebration of gratitude became a day that changed the Morrison family forever, proving that some truths have a way of surfacing exactly when they're least expected. Carol Morrison had always been the heart of her family, the one who organized holiday gatherings, remembered birthdays, and kept everyone connected across the sprawling Denver metro area. At 54, she was a successful real estate agent specializing in luxury homes in Cherry Creek and Greenwood Village. She'd been married to Tom Morrison for 26 years, and together they'd raised 3 children who were now adults with families of their own. But Carol's most cherished relationship was with her younger sister Jenny, who was 32 and worked as a graphic designer downtown. Carol had been 22 when Jenny was born, and their parents had always joked that Carol was more like a second mother to Jenny than a sister. The age gap had made them unusually close. Carol had helped raise Jenny, mentored her through school and career decisions, and Jenny looked up to Carol as both sister and role model. What made their relationship even more special was that they'd weathered family tragedy together. Their parents, Robert and Helen Morrison, had died in a car accident when Jenny was just 16, and Carol was 28. Carol had immediately stepped in as Jenny's guardian, helping her finish high school and supporting her through college. The tragedy had bonded them in a way that went beyond typical sibling relationships. They were each other's closest family, united by shared loss and mutual devotion. The Morrison family had grown over the years to include Carol's children, Michael, 24, Sarah, 22, and David, 19, plus Tom's extended family and the partners and children that came with adult kids. Thanksgiving had become a tradition that brought together nearly 20 people at Carol and Tom's spacious home in Highlands Ranch. Carol took pride in hosting these gatherings, seeing them as a celebration of the family she'd worked so hard to build and maintain after losing her parents. Thanksgiving 2024 started like every other year. Carol had been cooking since Wednesday, preparing her famous green bean casserole, homemade cranberry sauce, and the turkey recipe that had been in her family for generations. Tom handled the logistics, setting up tables, arranging seating, and managing the chaos of multiple conversations and children running through the house. Their adult children arrived with their own contributions and stories from their lives, and Jenny came early to help with last-minute preparations. During the cocktail hour before dinner, Jenny seemed unusually excited about something. She'd been talking for months about doing a DNA test to learn more about their family history. Both Carol and Jenny knew relatively little about their extended family. Their parents had been private people who'd shared few stories about grandparents, cousins, or family origins. After their parents' death, Carol and Jenny had found themselves with questions they couldn't answer about their heritage and genetic background. As the family gathered around the dining room table, Jenny announced that she had something exciting to share. "I finally got my 23andMe results back," she said, pulling out her phone with obvious enthusiasm. "I thought it would be fun to see what we could learn about our family background." Carol smiled indulgently. She'd been skeptical about DNA testing, worrying about privacy and not particularly curious about distant relatives. But Jenny had been persistent, and Carol had eventually agreed to do her own test, though she hadn't sent it in yet. "What did you find out?" Carol asked, expecting to hear about Irish or German ancestry percentages. Jenny opened the app on her phone and began reading the results. "Well, I'm 38% Irish, 22% British, and 15% Scandinavian," she said. "But the really interesting part is the relative matches. It shows I have a parent-child relationship with someone in the system." Carol felt a chill run down her spine, though she couldn't say why. What do you mean, parent-child relationship? Jenny's excitement was palpable as she scrolled through the results. It means I have a close genetic relative who's also in the system. The app says this person shares enough DNA with me to be a parent, child, or full sibling. Since mom and dad are gone, it would have to be a sibling we didn't know about, or... She paused, looking confused. Or a parent who's still alive. The table fell silent. Carol's mouth went dry as she watched Jenny study her phone screen. Does it say who the match is? Carol asked, her voice carefully controlled. It just shows initials and age ranges for privacy, Jenny said, still scrolling. It says CM, female, age 50 to 55, and there's an option to contact them through the app. Jenny looked up at Carol with excitement. Carol, what if we have an aunt or cousin we never knew about? What if there's family out there? Carol felt the room spinning. CM Carol Morrison, female, age 50 to 55. The DNA results were showing Jenny that her closest genetic relative was a woman whose initials and age range perfectly matched Carol herself. But that was impossible unless Carol wasn't actually Jenny's sister. Tom, who'd been listening from the other end of the table, seemed to sense Carol's distress. Honey, are you okay? You look pale. Carol excused herself to the bathroom, where she sat on the edge of the bathtub and tried to process what was happening. The DNA results suggested that Jenny wasn't her sister. They were showing a parent-child relationship between Jenny and someone with Carol's exact demographics, which meant either the test was wrong or there was something about Jenny's parentage that Carol had never known. But as Carol sat there, memories began surfacing that she'd buried for 32 years. She remembered her mother's unusual behavior during what she'd been told was Jenny's pregnancy. Helen Morrison had been extremely private about the pregnancy, refusing to let Carol come to doctor's appointments, insisting on handling everything herself. Carol had been away at college during most of the pregnancy and had only come home for brief visits. Carol also remembered that her mother had seemed older and more tired after Jenny's birth than she'd expected. Helen had been 45 when Jenny was born. Not impossible, but unusual for that era. And there had been whispered conversations between her parents that stopped whenever Carol entered the room, discussions about the situation and what's best for everyone. When Carol returned to the dining room, Jenny was still excitedly discussing the DNA results with other family members. I'm going to message this CM person, Jenny announced. Maybe we'll finally learn something about our family history. Carol knew she had to stop this before it went further. Jenny, can I talk to you privately for a minute? They stepped into Carol's home office, where Carol closed the door and tried to figure out how to handle the most difficult conversation of her life. Jenny sat in the chair across from Carol's desk, still holding her phone, completely unaware that she was about to learn that everything she thought she knew about her identity was about to change. Jenny, Carol began, her voice shaking, I need to tell you something that's going to be very difficult to hear, something I've never told anyone, not even Tom. Jenny's expression shifted from excitement to concern. What's wrong? You're scaring me. Carol took a deep breath and made a decision that would change their relationship forever. The DNA results you're seeing, the parent-child match with CM? That's me, Jenny. I'm CM. Jenny stared at her, confused. What do you mean that's you? You're my sister. No, Carol said, tears beginning to flow. I'm not your sister. I'm your mother. I gave birth to you when I was 22 years old. The next few minutes were a blur of questions, tears, and revelations. Carol explained that she'd gotten pregnant during her senior year of college with a boyfriend who'd abandoned her when he learned about the pregnancy. With no support from the baby's father and limited options in 1992, Carol had made the desperate decision to hide the pregnancy from everyone except her parents. Helen and Robert Morrison had been devastated by their daughter's situation, but had come up with what they'd believed was the perfect solution. They would raise Carol's baby as their own child, giving both Carol and the baby a chance at normal lives. Carol could finish college and start her career without the stigma of being a young single mother. and the baby would grow up in a stable, loving home with parents who desperately wanted another child. The plan had required elaborate deception. Carol had spent her final semester of college living at home, supposedly to save money, but really to hide her pregnancy. When Jenny was born, Carol had been present as the big sister, and Helen and Robert had registered themselves as the parents on the birth certificate. The three adults had agreed never to tell Jenny the truth, believing it would only cause confusion and pain. "So Mom and Dad weren't really my parents?" Jenny asked, her voice barely a whisper. "They were your parents in every way that mattered," Carol said firmly. "They loved you, raised you, sacrificed for you. I was barely more than a child myself when you were born. Mom and Dad gave you the stability and love I couldn't provide at 22. Jenny sat in stunned silence, processing the information. "And you've known this my whole life? You've been my mother, pretending to be my sister, for 32 years? Carol nodded, crying openly now. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Watching Mom and Dad raise you, knowing I was your birth mother, but that I couldn't claim you. But I also got to be part of your life in a way I never could have if we'd placed you for adoption with strangers. I got to help raise you, watch you grow up, be there for all your important moments." The conversation continued for over an hour, with Jenny asking dozens of questions about her father, the pregnancy, the decision to keep the secret, and what this meant for their relationship going forward. Carol answered everything honestly, sharing details she'd kept buried for 3 decades. Meanwhile, the rest of the family was still gathered around the Thanksgiving table, wondering where Carol and Jenny had disappeared to. Tom eventually knocked on the office door, concerned about how long they'd been gone. Carol invited him in and explained the situation, watching her husband of 26 years process the news that his sister-in-law was actually his wife's daughter. The revelation rippled through the entire family gathering. Carol's children learned that their Aunt Jenny was actually their half-sister. Jenny learned that her nephews and niece were actually her half-siblings. The family dynamics that had shaped all their relationships suddenly had to be reconsidered and redefined. But perhaps the most profound impact was on Carol and Jenny's relationship itself. For 32 years, they'd had an unusually close sisterly bond. Now they had to figure out how to be mother and daughter, how to process the deception and secrecy, and how to move forward with their relationship fundamentally changed. The initial shock gave way to deeper conversations over the following weeks. Jenny struggled with feeling deceived, but also recognized the impossible position Carol had been in as a young woman. Carol grappled with guilt over the years of secrecy, but also felt relief that the truth was finally out. Both women had to mourn the loss of their sisterly relationship while building something new as mother and daughter. Jenny also learned more about her biological father through Carol's memories and some old photographs Carol had kept hidden. He'd been a fellow college student who'd made it clear he wanted no part of parenthood. Carol had never pursued child support or any kind of relationship with him, choosing instead to let her parents provide the stability Jenny needed. The rest of the family adjusted to the new reality with surprising grace. Carol's children, now Jenny's half-siblings, embraced the change and welcomed Jenny as their sister rather than aunt. Tom supported both Carol and Jenny through the difficult transition, understanding that the secret had been kept out of love rather than malice. Today, more than a year after the Thanksgiving revelation, Carol and Jenny have built a relationship that honors both their shared history and their biological connection. They still see each other regularly, still share the close bond they've always had, but now with the added dimension of a mother-daughter relationship they'd never been able to acknowledge. Jenny has chosen to keep the Morrison name and considers Helen and Robert Morrison her true parents, while also embracing Carol as her birth mother. The distinction feels important to her, acknowledging the people who raised her while also honoring the woman who gave her life. Carol has found peace with the revelation as well. After 32 years of carrying the secret, she's grateful that Jenny knows the truth and that their relationship can finally be authentic. She often reflects on how different their lives might have been if she'd made different choices, but she's convinced that her parents' solution gave both her and Jenny the best possible outcomes. The DNA test that was supposed to reveal interesting facts about Irish ancestry instead revealed the most important truth about their family. The Morrison family now jokes that they'll never look at genetic testing the same way again, and that sometimes the most surprising relatives are the ones who've been sitting across from you at the dinner table all along. Have you ever learned something that completely changed your understanding of your family history? DNA testing and modern technology are revealing family secrets that have been hidden for generations. Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible true stories about family, identity, and the surprises that await us when we dig into our past. Next week, we'll share the story of a therapist who broke down during a session when her client's story hit far too close to home.